Hello student, in this class I will discuss about endogenetic and exogenetic forces. Endogenetic and exogenetic forces. This class will also include or clarify the concept relating to earth movement, which is in Hindi known as Bhu Sancharan. Okay? You see, as far as the question of earth is concerned, there operate two type of force. One force is from interior part of the earth and second force is from external part of the earth. Okay? The force which operates from internal part is referred to as endogenetic force. Endogenetic force. Right? Endo means inner, genetic means formation. Right? The force which operates from inside and generate the landform is referred to as endogenetic landform, endogenetic force, and the force which operates from the upper surface is referred to as exogenetic genetic force. Right? Exogenetic force or geomorphic force, morphic force. Okay? And exogenetic force is referred to as geomorphic force, and endogenetic force is also referred to as tectonic force. Okay? The tectonic force acts from the interior part of the earth, whereas geomorphic force act on the upper surface of the earth by agent of erosion, like river, like wind, like glacier, like oceanic wave. Okay? You see, as far as the question of endogenetic force is concerned, whenever endogenetic force operates, whether vertically or horizontally, getting well now? Whenever endogenetic force operates, it always creates vertical irregularity in the form of landform, positive and negative landform, What is the impact of endogenetic force? It is clear now. Whenever endogenetic force acts, whether vertically or horizontally, it always creates vertical irregularity on the earth surface. Okay? These vertical irregularity are in the form of the landform or relief feature. Getting well now? Suppose this is the surface which is on sea level, which is on average mean sea level, and a rock is held on this surface at the sea level. Okay? In this case, its energy will be in the form of mgh. M is the mass, g is the gravitational pull, and h is the height from the sea level now. Since h is 0, that's why mgs is equal to 0. It means this rock which exists at the sea level will exist in zero energy state, and zero energy state is referred to as ground state, and it is most stable state. Getting well now? But if the same rock, due to endogenetic force, will be uplifted at the height of h, getting well now? This is the height of this rock, then its energy will be mg at h. It means it will have more energy from the normal. This can be considered as normal now. So it will have more energy from the normal. It means it exists in the excited state, you can say. Okay? And excited state or higher energy state is unstable. Okay? At the same time, if the rock is subducted at the depth of minus h, then its energy will be negative mgh now. So you see, either the rock is in the suppose the position of rock is x, y, and z. Right? X is the most stable state. When the rock exists at the sea level, it remains in most stable state. Okay? But x and y and z in the form of positive and negative landform both represent unstable condition. On this basis, you can say that whenever endogenetic force act, it always creates vertical irregularity or causes instability. Okay? Because both positive and negative landform are, है ना, are the indicative of instability. Getting well now? So you can say that endogenetic forces causes instability on the earth surface, right, from the normal. Getting well now? Now see, on the other hand, whenever endogenetic force will create vertical irregularity in the form of positive and negative relief, on the other hand, exogenetic force, right, operate from the upper surface now. So actually you see the basic relation between endogenetic and exogenetic force is exogenetic force operate opposite to endogenetic force. Exogenetic force try to nullify the impact produced by endogenetic force. That's okay. The area where endogenetic force create positive landform, the exogenetic force, which is the force exerted by the agent of erosion, will conduct erosion of this area. Okay, and due to continuous erosion, this area, uplifted area, will be brought at the sea level. Getting well now? On the other hand, the area where due to endogenetic force negative landform are formed, at this site exogenetic force conduct deposition of the sediment till the area is made plain. It is clear now? So you can say that endogenetic and exogenetic force operate in opposite direction. Endogenetic force create vertical irregularity, which is which is indicative of instability. On the other hand, exogenetic force opposes the work performed by the endogenetic force. At the site of positive landform, it conduct erosion. At the site of negative landform, it conduct deposition. And finally, exogenetic force makes the area plain. That's why exogenetic force is also referred to as force of planation. Getting well now? It is referred to as समतलकारी बल, क्योंकि यह सतह को समतल बनाता है. Getting well now? So what is the correlation? It is clear. And you see, endogenetic force and exogenetic force both operate simultaneously. Suppose this is endogenetic force, right? And it causes upliftment of this area, and its rate can be identified as the rate of upliftment. Okay. On the other hand, this is exogenetic force. It conduct erosion, and the rate of erosion can be identified at RE. It is clear now? So there may be three conditions. First is, if rate of upliftment is greater than rate of erosion. Second, if rate of upliftment is equal to rate of erosion. Or third, if rate of upliftment is less than rate of erosion. It is clear now? So in first case, where rate of upliftment is greater than rate of erosion, then height of the landform will gradually increase. Okay. You see, since height of Himalaya is increasing with an average rate of 6 cm per year, that's why you can say that Himalaya exists in stage first. Getting well now? But if rate of upliftment will be equal to that of rate of erosion, then height will remain. In this case, height will increase. In first case, height will increase. Okay? When rate of upliftment is greater than rate of erosion, then height will increase. If rate of upliftment is equal to the rate of erosion, then height will remain constant. There will be no change in the height now. But if rate of upliftment is less than rate of erosion, then there will be gradual decrease in the height of the landform, and whatever landform which will exist in this stage is considered to be existing in residual state or relict stage. Okay? If mountain exists in this stage, the mountain is referred to as example of residual mountain or relict mountain. Getting well now? So everywhere endogenetic force and exogenetic force operate in opposite direction. It is clear. It also became clear that endogenetic force always create instability, whereas exogenetic force try to attain stability. It is clear, na? Actually, it is clear. So actually, they work in opposite direction every place, right? But there are particularly certain conditions which you know that agent of erosion perform three type of work: erosion, transportation, and deposition. So the area where positive landform exists due to endogenetic force, agent of erosion will conduct erosion. On the other hand, when negative landform is formed due to endogenetic force, the agent of erosion or exogenetic force will conduct depositional work there, and finally they will make the area plane. That's why exogenetic force is referred to as force of planation. Getting well now? So the state, you can say, the landform is the function of the ratio between endogenetic and exogenetic force. Getting well now? And their rate determine whether the height of the landform will increase, whether the height of the landform will remain constant, or whether the height will decrease. It is clear now? If the height is increasing or any landform is existing in the stage first, it is considered to be in the youthful stage, as is the case of Himalaya. If any landform exists in third stage, that is rate of ultimate is less than rate of erosion, then this mountain is referred to as residual mountain. Eastern Ghat, Western Ghat, Vindhyan, Bhadner, Kamud, Satpura, Mahadev, Maikal, right? Again, particularly you see Nilgiri, Cardamom Hill of the South India, all are the example of residual mountain because they exist in stage third. Okay. Now see, as far as we will discuss endogenetic and exogenetic force one by one. Okay, for general understanding, you see, endogenetic force. Okay, the name suggests that Indo means inner and genetic means formation. It means the force which operates from inside and generates something is referred to as endogenetic force. Endogenetic force causes the movement of the rock in the earth interior. That's why it causes earth movement, you can say, and in Hindi it is referred to as Bhusancharan. Okay, so endogenetic force is the cause of earth movement. It is the cause of earthquake. It is the cause of volcanic eruption. It is the cause of origin of the mountain. It is the cause of gradual upliftment in the height of mountain. The process of gradual upliftment in the height of the mountain is referred to as glyptogenesis. Okay, glyptogenesis. Getting well now? Himalaya exists in this stage. Okay. Actually, there are three stages for the origin of mountain. One is referred to as lithogenesis, second is referred to as orogenesis, and third is referred to as glyptogenesis. Orogenesis is the process of formation of geosyncline. Geosyncline is defined as narrow and shallow water body, right? Thickly bedded sedimentary rock which is produced at the bed of the ocean. When it starts subsiding due to its weight, it is referred to as geosyncline. Right? Geosyncline is the precondition for origin and development of fold mountain. Getting well now? That's why geosyncline is also referred to as erosion. Since geosyncline formation is due to the continuous sedimentation at the bed of the ocean, that's why the process is referred to as lithogenesis. Getting well now? Lithogenesis means layer upon layer is formed, and hence when its weight increases, it starts subducting, and then this first you see the sediment get deposited. Initially it remains in unconcentrated form, later it gets solidified in the form of several layers, hence sedimentary rock are formed, and when the thickness of sedimentary rock increases beyond a particular level, then subduction of this sedimentary rock due to its weight occur, and this is referred to as geosyncline. This sedimentary rock is referred to as geosyncline, and Cover given the name called geosyncline as erosion, right? Means the site for mountain building. So this is the first stage of mountain formation, right, which is referred to as lithogenesis. Getting well now? And when suppose this is sedimentary rock or geosyncline, and when geosyncline due to orogenetic compressor force convert into anticline and syncline, This stage is referred to as orogenesis. Orogenesis, getting well now? The first stage is lithogenesis. Lithogenesis. Second is orogenesis, right? And if when the height of antisyncline will gradually increase, right? Gradual increase in the height of the mountain is referred to as glyptogenesis. Gliptogenesis. Getting well now? Right? So there are three stages of mountain building. One is lithogenesis, second is orogenesis, and third one is glyptogenesis. Okay? The period during which orogenesis occur marks the age of the formation origin of the mountain. As for example, in case of Himalaya, okay, Rockies and Andes, orogenesis occurred during tertiary period. That's why Rockies, Andes, Alps and Himalaya are the example of tertiary fold mountain. Getting well now? Since height of Himalaya is gradually increasing, that's why it is said, though it originated, orogenesis of Himalaya occurred during tertiary period, but right now the height is gradually increasing now. So in this context, you can say that Himalaya exists in the glyptogenetic stage. Getting well? Right? Actually, orogenesis or glyptogenesis is due to endogenetic force. Okay? Actually, deposition at the bed of the ocean is due to oceanic wave. Na? Getting well now? Right? So, how it operates, now it will be clear gradually. Endogenetic force is also referred to as tectonic, you know, tectonic force. Getting well? It operates everywhere in the interior part of the earth. Okay, according to plate tectonic theory, no part of the earth is tectonically inactive. Everywhere movement is going on. Okay, in some part movement is more fast and hence it is expressed in the form of earthquake, mountain building or volcanic eruption. Getting well now? But here we are sitting and still according to plate tectonic theory, right, the interior part of the rock of this area would have been in the moving condition. Since the velocity is very slow, that's why it is not easily noticeable. Getting well now? Now see, as far as the question of origin of the endogenetic force is concerned, how it originates, it is clear. I will discuss what is the source of origin of what is the source of endogenetic force. Okay, so several geographers tried to explain the origin of endogenetic force. Okay, the first theory to explain the region of endogenetic force was contraction theory. Right? Contraction theory was propounded by Hall and Dana. Okay? Hall and Dana propounded this theory, and later it was supported. Hall and Dana were American geographer, and later Elie de Beaumont supported this theory. He was European geographer. In geomorphology, there are two schools of thought. One is American school of thought and second is European school of thought. If any concept is supported by both school of thought, it is largely accepted. Getting well now? So Hall and Dana propounded this theory, the contractional theory. Okay, that's why Hall and Dana is referred to as father of contractionists. Okay, and Elie de Beaumont, who was European geographer, later supported contraction theory. Okay. So this theory was based on the assumption that initially Earth was in the gaseous state, later it cooled down to become liquid, and finally into solid state. It ended solid state now. During the process of the conversion in the state of the Earth, right, Earth's surface was experiencing tangentially acting contractional force from all the sides. It is clear now? Tangentially acting contractional force was operative during this process when Earth was attaining thus changing its state from gas to liquid and finally into solid form. during this process, tangentially acting contextual force was operative. It is clear now. And according to contextual theory or according to Hall and Dana, this tangentially acting contextual force was considered as the cause of endogenetic force. Getting well now? What was the basic assumption idea of the contextual theory? It is clear. You can directly say that according to contextual theory, the tangentially acting contextual force is the cause of endogenetic force. Okay? Now see, again, actually contextual theory was later criticized on several grounds. One of the ground was on the ground of inadequacy, and second ground was, important ground was, since Earth attained the solid form, there is no further contraction, and in this case, no tectonic phenomena should be observed on the Earth's surface, but still we are observing earthquake, tsunami, volcanic eruption, upliftment in the height of the mountain. That put a question mark on the validity of contextual theory. Getting well now? So against the against the criticism of contextual theory, okay, actually another theory was propounded, and this theory is referred to as continental drift theory. Continental drift theory. Okay, so continental drift theory was propounded by Taylor, later improved by Wegener. Getting well now? Later improved by Wegener. According to Wegener, three forces were responsible. According to continental drift theory, prior to Carboniferous period, the entire landmass were united to form a single landmass known as Pangaea, and Pangaea was surrounded from all the sides by the extensive water body known as Panthalassa or primitive Pacific Ocean. That's why Pacific Ocean is considered as the oldest ocean of the world, because it was initially existing in the form of Panthalassa. This is the general concept of Wegener. It is clear now? Now see, Wegener stated that due to three forces, namely force of buoyancy, Utplavan bal, as per Archimedes, okay. Second is differential gravitational pull, and third is tidal force. Right? All the forces cause the fragmentation or drifting of Pangaea. Okay? You see, tidal force is due to the moon and the sun, but these two forces, that is force of buoyancy and differential gravitational pull, operate from the interior part of the Earth now. So these two forces were considered the cause of endogenetic force according to Wegener. Getting well? The force of buoyancy and differential gravitational pull, you can say that according to continental drift theory, the main cause of endogenetic force is the force of buoyancy and differential gravitational pull. According to contextual theory, it was the tangentially acting contextual force which was responsible to cause drifting of the Pangaea. It was due to, according to contextual theory, it was tangentially acting contextual force which is causative factor for endogenetic force. But according to Wegener, endogenetic force operate because of force of buoyancy and differential gravitational pull. Okay? Again see, Joly propounded radioactive theory of mountain building. Joly, right? Joly was the third geographer, Joly, right, who propounded radioactive theory of mountain building. So according to Joly, the presence of radioactive element in the interior part of the Earth is the main cause of endogenetic force. Clear? According to Joly, the presence of radioactive element in the interior part of the Earth is the main cause of endogenetic force. You know that radioactive element, the nucleus of radioactive element are unstable na, because right, n upon p is not unity na. They emit alpha, beta and gamma rays in order to attain stability na. Okay? So these forces, this alpha, beta and gamma rays are the source of energy for generation of forces according to Joly, you can say. Okay? So according to contraction theory, tangentially acting contextual force was the causative factor for endogenetic force. According to continental drift theory or according to Wegener, differential gravitational pull and force of buoyancy was responsible. According to Joly, presence of radioactive element is the cause of endogenetic force. Okay. Next one is Delhi. Delhi propounded sliding continental theory of mountain building. Sliding continental theory of mountain building. According to Delhi's sliding continental theory of mountain building, the gravitational pull of the earth is the main cause of endogenetic force. Getting well? This is fourth particularly exemption concept. It is clear. The first was contraction theory. Tangentially acting contractional force was responsible according to contractionist. According to drift hypothesis, force of buoyancy and differential gravitational pull is the cause of endogenetic force. According to Joly, the presence of radioactive active element is the cause of endogenetic force. According to Delhi, the gravitational pull is the cause of endogenetic force. But the most accepted view was propounded by Arthur Holmes, who propounded thermal convective current theory. Right? Actually, Holmes said that upper part of the earth exists in the solid form, which is referred to as a stratum, and inside the earth there exists a liquid zone which is known as substratum. This is a stratum which exists in the solid form. Getting well? And inside substratum there exists liquid now. This is referred to as substratum. Holmes said that inside substratum there is unequal distribution of radioactive element. When the temperature difference between the two places in the substratum increases, then flow of energy starts in the form of convective current. Okay, and this current was referred by Arthur Holmes as thermal convective current because it was due to the difference in the temperature condition in the substratum. And convection occur in the cyclic form. So that's why Holmes said that flow of current start in the interior part in the substratum, and this flow is the causative factor for endogenetic force. Right? Which force is causative force for endogenetic force? It is clear now. It is the flow of thermal convective current inside substratum. Okay? And this concept is considered most valid right now. And plate tectonic theory is also based on this theory. Okay? A plate tectonic theory is, according to plate tectonic theory, you know that plate tectonic theory explains the relative movement of the plate now. And according to this theory, the main cause of plate movement is the flow of thermal convective current. Right? This is based on the Arthur Holmes hypothesis. Clear? Now see, as far as you got the idea, general idea, ki what is the meaning of endogenetic force, what is the causative factor, how it originates now, and you see one important point, ki high temperature conditions prevail in the interior part of the earth. The average temperature of our surface is considered as 15 to 20 degrees Celsius. At the height of 40 kilometers, the temperature is around 500 degrees Celsius. At the depth of 100 kilometers, 1100 degrees Celsius temperature is recorded. At the depth of 400 kilometers, 700 degrees Celsius temperature is recorded. At the depth of 700 kilometers, 1900 degrees Celsius temperature is recorded. At the depth of 2900 kilometers, 3700 degrees Celsius temperature is recorded. Getting well now? At the depth of 5100 kilometers, right, 4200 degrees Celsius temperature is recorded, and at the center of the earth 4500 degrees Celsius temperature is recorded. Getting well now? So actually you see 100 degrees Celsius, 1100 degrees Celsius temperature is considered as the initial melting point of the rock. Okay, since this temperature is attained at the depth of 100 kilometers, that's why it is not possible for the man to directly go to the central part of the earth and to measure the temperature. So whatever information we have about the temperature condition of the earth interior is based on geothermic graph. geothermic graph reveal the है ना reveal this temperature condition of the interior part of the. There are two important facts actually. If there are two type of region on the Earth's surface, in some part temperature at the depth of 40 kilometers is 500 degrees Celsius. This is a place, and in some area the temperature at the depth of 440 kilometers is 1000 degrees Celsius. Getting well now? This is B place. Okay, it is obvious that here, suppose if you will consider radioactive as the main cause of high temperature condition, then certainly here concentration of radioactive element is more as compared to that of A. Na? Getting well now? So you see, A will be tectonically inactive area and B will be tectonically active area. So in tectonically active area, earthquake, volcanic eruption, origin of the mountain, upliftment of the mountain occur. Na? Okay, or this phenomena are like earthquake occur or volcanic eruption. So according to geographer, these phenomena occur with an intention to attain the state of equilibrium. Okay, so when temperature will increase, it will impart stability to the system. Na? So if seismic wave originate from the focus, you know that focus is the place where seismic wave originate, na? And it start flowing in the form of primary wave, secondary wave, surface wave or long wave known as indicated by L wave, PG, SG, P star and S star wave. Na? So it causes the dissipation of energy and equal distribution of energy. Getting well now? So that's why these areas are more active as compared to that of this inactive zone. Okay, so it depends on the temperature factor. Okay, now see, you are in the position to explain what is the meaning of endogenetic force, how it originates. I discussed several particularly hypotheses, opinion of different geographers about the reason of endogenetic, including Hall and Donner concept, Hall and Donner concept, okay. Holmes concept I explained, Daly concept I explained, Jolly concept I explained. It is clear now? Okay. Now see the type of endogenetic force. So forces, there are two type of force, you know. One force acts from the interior part of the earth. This is known as endogenetic force. Endogenetic force. And another force operates from outside. This is genetic force. Getting well now? Endogenetic force is also referred to as tectonic force. Tectonic force causes stability, है ना, producing vertical irregularity on the earth surface. On the other hand, exogenetic force is referred to as force of planation. It imparts stability to the system or the part of the surface. Getting well now? Now see, there are two types of endogenetic force. One type of endogenetic force. There are two types of endogenetic force. One is referred to as diastropic force. DIASTROPHIC, diastrophic force, and second is catastrophic, CATASTRA, catastrophic force, akasmic bal. Okay, so you see, one is diastropic and second is catastrophic. There are two type of force, or endogenetic force is divided into two parts. One is diastropic and second is catastrophic. Getting well now? You see, as far as the question of diastropic force is concerned, it is the combination of two terms, dias and tropic. Dias and tropic. Dias means slowly and tropic means acting. Okay, the force which operates slowly inside the earth is referred to as diastrophic force. The force which slowly act on the earth surface, which slowly act, is referred to as diastrophic na, because dias means slowly and tropic means acting. Getting well na? So diastrophic force is slowly acting force, whereas catastrophic force is suddenly acting force. Suddenly acting force. This force is noticeable during earthquake, during volcanic eruption, etc. Getting well now? What is the relation between diastrophic and catastrophic? Suppose this is the plate held in the interior part of the earth and it is slowly moving. Okay, then it will be referred to as diastrophic. When it will attain the climax condition, then it will fall. This is referred to as catastrophic. It is clear now? So extreme stage of diastrophic is manifested in the form of catastrophic force. Getting well now? It means diastrophic force prepares the background for occurrence of the catastrophic phenomena in the form of earthquake, volcanic eruption or mountain building. Clear? Now see, diastrophic force is further divided into two parts. One is if it acts vertically or either it acts vertically or it acts horizontally, it is clear? So there are two types of diastrophic force. One is vertically acting diastrophic force and second is horizontally acting diastrophic force. Okay? The force, diastrophic force which acts vertically is referred to as epirogenetic force, EPI, RO, epirogenetic force. Okay? Epiros means continent, genetic means formation. It means epirogenetic force is referred to as continent building force. The vertically acting endogenetic force or diastrophic force is referred to as continent building force. Okay? Is referred to as continent building force. On the other hand, horizontally acting diastrophic or endogenetic force is referred to as orogenetic force. Orogenetic. Orogenetic force. Okay? Oro means mountain. Genetic means formation. The force which act horizontally is called orogenetic force. Okay? You see, very important and noticeable fact is, normally it appears that if the force will act vertically, then it will cause the origin of the mountain. Getting well na? Normally it appears. But Holmes clearly specified the fact that mountain formation occur mainly when horizontally acting force operate, and the force should operate from the interior part of the earth. What a statement was given by Holmes, it is clear now? He said that mountain building occur due to horizontally acting force and the force should operate from the interior part of the earth. So what is the basic difference between horizontally acting force and vertically acting force? It is clear now? Vertically acting force is referred to as epirogenetic force. The term derived from epiros plus genetic. Epiros means continent and genetic means formation. Okay? So that's why vertically acting force can be referred to as continent building force. On the other hand, horizontally acting force, right, is referred to as orogenetic. Oro means mountain, genetic means formation, means horizontally acting force can be referred to as orogenetic force. Okay? And horizontally acting force is based on the is, you can say, is as per the, है ना, recommend, as per the assumption of Holmes, who has stated that horizontally acting force causes the origin of mountain and the force must operate from the interior part of the earth. Right? You have drawn it now. Now see, if again if there are two segments of epirogenetic force, two segment, one is vertically acting upward and second is vertically acting downward. Now, so if the force is acting in this way, upward, and if the force is acting downward, now, the epirogenetic force which act in upward direction is referred to as force of upliftment, and the epirogenetic force which act in downward direction is referred to as force of subsidence. So there are two components of epirogenetic force. The first component is force of upliftment, okay, also known as force of emergence, and second is force of subsidence or force of submergence. Clear? Actually, force of upliftment will cause the origin of the continent. Force of upliftment will cause the origin of the continent, whereas force of submergence or subsidence will cause the origin of the ocean bed. Getting well now? How the force operate is clear. Vertically acting force is referred to as epirogenetic force. There are two vertical components, either upward or downward. Upward acting force is referred to as force of upliftment or force of emergence. Getting well? And downward acting is known as force of subsidence or force of submergence. Getting well now? Force of upliftment causes the creation of the continent and force of subsidence causes the creation of the oceanian bed or depression. Extensive depression may be created due to force of subsidence. Na? Okay. Now see, I am erasing this. Actually, second component of diastopic force is orogenetic force. Orogenetic. Because I had divided diastopic force into two components. One is epirogenetic and second is orogenetic. Now, so orogenetic force, orogenetic. Genetic force. So as far as the question of orogenetic force is concerned, if the force operate in this way or the force act in this way, clear na? This is first and this is second. There are two types from this figure. It is obvious that there are two types of orogenetic force. If the force act towards each other and if it act in opposite direction, in second case, na? Suppose this is rock and the force, these are the horizontally acting force. That since horizontally acting force is referred to as orogenetic force, that's why you can say this is orogenetic force acting in each other direction. Na? So it will cause compression of this rock. Okay, so that's why this force is referred to as orogenetic compressional force. Compressional force, that is OCF, orogenetic compressional force. A component of orogenetic force is orogenetic compressional force, and when the force will act in opposite direction, as is given in case of B, na? When force will act in opposite direction, it will cause tension on the rock, elongation of the rock. Na? So this force is referred to as OTF, orogenetic tensional force. OTF. This is OCF and this is OTF. OCF means orogenetic compressional force and OTF means orogenetic tensional force. Clear? Both the force are horizontally acting, that's why they are referred to as orogenetic. Right? If they work in towards each other it causes compression. That's why it is referred to as orogenic compressional force. And if the force acts in opposite direction, it causes tension on the rock. That's why it is referred to as OTF, that is orogenic tensile force. Okay. Actually, when OCF will operate on the rock, it will cause bending of the rock, bending will occur. Its impact will be bending. Okay. And you see, if the rock force operates in opposite direction and this is rock, it causes tension. Rocks are elastic in character. There is a limit up to which the rock can be stretched. If limit will be crossed, this limit is referred to as elastic limit. Then if limit will be crossed, then fragmentation will occur. Okay. So that's why OTF causes fragmentation, fracture. What is the impact, immediate impact of OCF? The impact of OCF, that is orogenic compressional force, is in the form of bending. The impact of OTF is in the form of fracture. Clear? In the form of fracture, OCF and OTF. Okay? Now see, as far as the question of bending is concerned, so there are two types of bending. In one type of bending, this rock will bend in this way. Getting well now? Bending of this rock will occur in this way. You say this part X is referred to as anticline and Y is referred to as syncline. The uplifted part is referred to as anticline and subducted part is referred to as syncline. Okay? Uplifted part is referred to as anticline and subducted part is referred to as syncline. What is the basic difference? It is clear now? So if this is one way of bending, okay, and if in case of bending no anticline and syncline are formed, either the rock take this shape, this type of bending occur, or this type of bending occur. I am differentiating, you see, the type of bending in which anticline and syncline is formed, anticline and syncline are formed is called folding. This type of bending is referred to as folding. Folding. F-O-L-D-I-N-G. Okay? And the type of bending in which no anticline and syncline are formed are referred to as warping. Warping. W-A-R-P-I-N-G. What is the basic difference between folding and warping? It is clear now. This is folded picture, F-O-L, folding. This is folding and this is referred to as warping. So bending, there are two types of bending. One is folding and second one is warping. Getting well now? Actually, you see, this folding will cause the origin of the fold mountain. The anticlinal part will gradually uplift, and hence will develop in the form of peak of the mountain. Peak of the mountain is also referred to as water divide. Okay. On the other hand, synclinal part will develop in the form of valley, mountain valley. Getting well now? On the other hand, you see the type of bending in which no anticline and syncline are formed is referred to as warping now. So there are two types of warping. This is X and this is A and this is Y now. A and this is B. So A, in case of A, there occur upliftment of the rock now. This is referred to as upwarping. Upwarping. Okay. And this is referred to as downwarping. Downwarping. There are two types of warping. In first case, there occur upliftment of the rock and this upliftment will cause the formation of plateau or any dome shape feature now. And downwarping will create basin type of feature. A small basin type of feature. Getting well now? So what is the basic difference between folding and warping? It is clear now. Actually, the type of fold bending in which anticline and syncline is formed is referred to as folding. The type of bending in which north anticline and syncline are formed is referred to as warping. In warping, there are two conditions. Somewhere the rock uplift and it is referred to as upwarping. Upwarping causes the formation of plateau or dome-shaped feature, whereas down warping will cause the creation of basin type of feature or depression. Getting well now? Okay. Actually, you see, folding will cause the origin of the fold mountain, right? We have four tertiary fold mountain, young mountain of the world: Rockies, Andes, Alps and Himalaya. So you can say that Himalaya is the product of orogenic compressive force. Getting well now? Himalaya, because it is the fold mountain na? So every fold mountain is due to orogenic compressive force. You can easily conclude. Note it down now. Now see, actually second case of horizontally acting force is OTF, that is orogenic tensile force na. If the force will act in opposite direction, it is referred to as orogenic tensile force. And since rocks are elastic in nature, that's why when it will be stretched beyond the elastic limit, fragmentation of the rock will occur, and this fracture, and it will cause fracture of the rock. Okay. Now see, if due to this force, this rock